It's a pretty common event, almost daily some might say, updating our computers, our cell phones, our tablets, and to a lesser extent, our cameras. In fact, whenever we call customer support about any issue, the first question we're asked outside of our name and address, have we updated to the latest firmware? Now imagine having to pay $730 to fix your camera after doing just that, updating the firmware. And to make matters worse, this isn't a one-off issue. But before we get to the details, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, helps this channel grow, and keeps you up to date on the latest camera coverage. Corey at Camera Nerds Media bought a used Sony FX3. After returning home from his visit to his local camera store to pick up a used Sony FX3, he started playing around with it, got a charged battery, checked the settings, the configurations, played around with all the menus, and actually used the camera for a good month before he decided, everything's working fine here, so why not update the firmware to 5.0? And yes, that's classic foreshadowing. Now Corey, despite having the camera for a month before applying the firmware update, didn't bother to check to see if there were any outstanding issues or incidents. And what I always recommend whenever I cover a new firmware update, whether it's for Canon, Nikon, and Sony, I always recommend, unless you absolutely have to have this firmware update today to fix an issue, wait a couple of weeks and then check back to see if there are any major issues. And I'll get to more details on that in a little bit later in the video. But as far as the update went, it updated successfully. No errors were reported. But shortly after doing the firmware update, Corey noticed some problems, some very significant problems. And despite what you're hearing in some media circles that it bricked the camera, it didn't. But it pretty much rendered it useless. Corey could record video for about 5 seconds, and then it would reboot. Or he could record stills, again for about 5 seconds, and it would reboot. And Corey goes on to say that no matter what he did, the camera would essentially reboot continuously after just a few seconds, 5 seconds or so of recording video or taking stills, essentially rendering the camera useless. Now remember, he had the camera for a month. He was using it, he was testing it, he was playing around with it, and didn't have any issues. There was no constant rebooting or anything. These issues started, well, listen to his own words.
And I said, Renee, possibly, but I think it's kind of weird that how the camera worked perfectly before the firmware, and then after the firmware update, it doesn't work.
So Corey did what any of us would do in this situation. Well, okay, after swearing, he called customer support. He talked to an agent, and the agent took him through a few basic troubleshooting steps, and then some more, and then some more. At the end of the call, there was no resolution, no offer of hope other than to call the repair center. So he did. He called the repair center, explained the situation to them again, and this is where things went from bad to worse. He was told because the camera's more than a year old, he would have to submit the camera as part of an unwarranted claim. And this is where, at the beginning of the video when I said it was going to cost $730 to get fixed, I was understating. Well, let's hear what Sony had to say.
The base rate, the lowest it is to repair that model, is $667. Then once we receive it and the technicians evaluate it, if they find that the parts required to complete the repair are costly, the repair becomes due first. Unfortunately,
the phone cut out for a little bit, but Corey did validate with Sony, and this is what they told him. The very bare minimum charge to repair anything on the FX3 would be $730. That's the minimum charge, and the cost could go up considerably from there. Just imagine you did a firmware update to bring your camera up to the latest firmware update, and it essentially made the camera non-functional. You couldn't use it for its intended purpose, for a firmware update supplied by the manufacturer. Imagine how frustrated you would be. I can only imagine how frustrated Corey was, but on the phone he was very polite, he was very calm, and he said to the agent, he explained, he said, you do understand that these problems didn't start until I applied your firmware update 5.0 from the camera, the FX3 being at 2.0.
Even if it was a firmware problem, it would still be
The $667?
Right, yeah, yes, because that's the lowest it is to repair that model.
So, even if Sony's firmware update for their own product caused the problem, Corey, and not just Corey, but any other customer that would have this issue, would have to go out of pocket to get it fixed. And they couldn't even tell him for sure what it was going to cost. They said a minimum of $730. And if you listen to the recording, it'll say 600 and something, but then you have to pay to ship it off. So your basic minimum charge was $730.
Then you'd only be responsible for a $35 diagnostic fee and the return shipping.
That's not a good feeling. So I thought, well, okay, I wanted to get an idea before I started doing this video, how widespread is this issue? And unfortunately, Corey found many references to firmware updates going bad, and these were found on Sony forums. And some even said that when it comes to updates on Sony equipment, don't even bother, it's not worth it. Not if you're outside of the warranty period. And Corey, like a good investigative journalist, didn't just let things go. He asked the repair center if they'd seen any other issues like this, and, well, here's their response.
Have you noticed anything with that?
Right. I have seen a few of those lately. You know, not a lot to raise a flag, but we have seen that. We are able to address that for you.
So, just to recap, Corey bought an FX3 from his local camera store, a used version. It was outside of its warranty, and after playing around with the camera for a month, when I say playing around, I mean using it, getting used to the menus, the feel, and shooting some videos and some stills, he decided, hey, look, it's on firmware 2.0, firmware 5.0 offers some bug fixes, which is good, always good to get bug fixes out of the way, and also some enhancements. So he updated. And after the update, shooting video and shooting stills would cause the camera to reboot after about 5 seconds. Really irritating. No matter how many times he tried to record, it would reboot. Really annoying. I'd be frustrated. So after spending a bunch of time on the phone with customer service, Sony customer service or customer support, he was told, yep, there's nothing we can do, talk to the repair center. The repair center said, yes, we can definitely take care of this. Minimum $730, and the price can go up from there. And yes, we know it happened as a result of a firmware update. Not our problem. Not our problem. This is where two very important things I want to bring up. I mentioned this earlier in the video. I'm always covering firmware updates. Well, at least major firmware updates for Sony, for Nikon, and for Canon. Because lately, and this started with Panasonic, we started getting enhancements. We started getting bug fixes. We started getting regular updates improving the functionality of our cameras so they don't feel as old and stale and dated. And that's a good thing. And once in a while, like the Canon EOS R6, when it was firmware 1.3.0 was released, it basically bricked the R6. Almost immediately, within 48 hours, Canon pulled that firmware update, and then a few days later, or a week later at the latest, 1.3.1 was released. And there was no lasting issues. It's so common. If you're over the age of 20 and you own a computer or a phone or anything like that, whenever we've called in for support, we hear the same thing. After we give them our name and address, they ask, have you updated to the latest service pack, the latest firmware update, the latest software update? And if the answer is no, go ahead and do that and then call us back if the issue continues. We're almost primed and triggered to go ahead and do that. But in this case, despite applying a firmware update from Sony's own site to one of their own cameras that essentially rendered the camera's purpose, it's to record videos, especially videos, and take pictures, to render those capabilities useless, and then to tell the customer that, sorry buddy, that's your tough luck. That's not cool. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this video. I find it very, very frustrating. Now, again, keep in mind, and I'm not going to lay this on Corey, even though Corey probably should have checked to see if there were any known issues at the time. We don't always know this. So I always recommend waiting at least a week or two before applying any firmware update or software update to anything. You don't want to be the first out there, unless of course the problem you're having is really bad. Wait a week or two, see if there are any issues, and then update. I did speak to Corey because I didn't want to just publish this video if it had already been resolved, because he put this video out a little while ago, a couple of weeks ago. And I reached out to Corey and asked him if anything had changed, and this is what he had to say. I hope to get some answers soon, not only for my camera, but for everyone's concerns regarding firmware and their cameras. I'm currently in communication with Sony regarding these issues. And I agree with Corey. And it certainly shouldn't take a couple of YouTube videos and some press for Sony to do the right thing, to own up to their own mistake, their own responsibility here. They issued a firmware update that's causing problems for not just Corey, but many other people, from what looks to be hundreds or maybe even thousands of customers that are affected. Sony, come on, man, do the right thing. I mean, we've been complaining for years about providing us with more regular updates like Panasonic started doing and Canon and Nikon are now doing. And that's great that you're providing more firmware updates, but if you screw things up, if your firmware update is responsible for basically bricking these cameras, making their initial intended purpose basically useless, do the right thing. Don't put it on the customer. Don't make them have to pay $730 or more. Now, maybe you don't care about your customers anymore. I own Sony equipment. I've owned Sony equipment in the past. I've had the A7S III. I think you make some incredible products, but you got to do a better job of looking after your customers here. I mean, Corey put out a video. Nothing happened right away. I'm putting out a video now. There's press on this. It's disgusting, and I hate it when I see companies that just abuse the relationship with the customer. They, we'll do whatever the heck we want. I'm just sick and tired of it. And so this is in my wheelhouse. I cover firmware updates. I cover Sony equipment. So I'm more than happy to put out this video on my rant. Hopefully this will affect change. I have talked to Corey. I've asked him to text me, to call me if he gets any update on this. And I want to follow up with it. What I'm really hoping is that they don't just make it right for him. They issue some sort of press release saying, hey, if you updated your firmware and you're having any issues whatsoever, it's on us. Don't you worry about it. You shouldn't have to pay for our mistakes. Because right now, Sony is saying exactly that. You updated your camera with our approved firmware update. You got a problem? Almost like the mafia. Too bad. Hit the bricks. They wouldn't say that, but because I keep this channel G-rated, I can't say what I want to say, but it would be in a De Niro type voice. Or maybe a facepalm will work right here. So a big thanks for Corey. I highly recommend watching his video. All I did was take some of the key points to put it out there that really encapsulate what went on. Watch his video, thumbs up. He's got a really good channel. And Corey, thank you very much for letting me use some of your clips in this video to help tell the story, and hopefully we can get this resolved very soon. And thank you for you at home watching. It's very much appreciated. This channel wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for your support. But that's all I have to say at this point. I'm a little bit too angry to go on any further. Cheers. Have a good day.